Okay, so for the next lesson, we'll have logarithmic functions. So let's go to the basic definition. You know that this one is in terms of exponential. The form is exponential, but what you are used to seeing is that y is the one on the left, and then x is the one on top, right? So what happens here is that it's reversed now. So you know that if you have this form, the base should be greater than 0 and not equal to 1. The power or the exponent is any real number. And then x here is, if it's positive, it's greater than, what's the number outside? It's 0. So that means, um, basing on the exponential form, you know how to solve for the domain, range, and asymptotes. However, since the asymptote is an x equals something, it's not a horizontal asymptote now. It's called a vertical asymptote. So this is actually transformed into its logarithmic form. So just like this, guys. If you know that 2 to the 3 is 8, what we do in the logarithmic form is logarithm, the base is kept as the base, and then they switch places. It becomes like that. That's why you notice the base, which is a, is still the base of the log, and then the x and y switch in places. X is what you call the argument of the logarithm. X is the argument of the logarithm. And then this one is red. Y is equal to the logarithm of x base a. And then you notice that they are inverse of exponential functions, as I have said. Look at this. From logarithmic form to exponential. Pero ako, ang ginagawa ko, I start with the exponential because it's easier. And then I transform into the logarithmic. So 9 to the third power is 729. So 9 is the base. I keep that as the base. And then I switch the partners. Guys, for example, if I write there x to the third is equal to z, can you please help me transform this into log? Logarithm of what? X. And then they switch places. So logarithm of z base x is 3. So the argument of log should always be positive. What's the argument? Yung letter z. It can never be negative. Ito. The domain is 0. So I'll teach you a better way to write the domain. Ito, you have to remember this. Logarithm of 0, any base is undefined. Because whatever makes the, like this one, 0, x equals 0, that is what you call the vertical asymptote. Here, what makes x 0? Negative 3 halves. Therefore, negative 3 halves is your vertical asymptote here. X is 2. So 2 is your vertical asymptote. So how do we graph this? Ito I'll just show them to you. Pero what I will do here is, I will solve something muna. Just to remind you. For example, if I ask you, how do you graph this? It's gonna be very difficult. So what I would do, guys, is this. 2 to the y. Okay, with this, I can already give you my domain, my range, my asymptote. Pero my asymptote now is a vertical asymptote. And then what else? The x and y values for the table. So guys, what is in the exponent? Is it x or y? Here, y is in the exponent. Therefore, y is an element of all real. Baliktad, di ba? And then what's the domain, guys? Can you tell me what the domain is? Look at the symbol in front of 2. X is greater than 0 because x equals 0 is your vertical asymptote. So if y is any real number, What I will do, guys, is this. -1, -2, -3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So, dito naman ako magpa-plug in sa y kasi y is any real number. So, guys, can you please help me? 2 to the 0 is 1. 2 to the 1 is 2. 2 to the 2 is 4. 8. This is 0.5, 0.25, 0.125. Am I correct? So, let's try graphing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. 1. Okay. It says there that if x is 0.125, it's -3. I'll draw muna my asymptote. Your asymptote now is x equals 0. It's vertical. It's not a horizontal asymptote. Okay. Let's plot. -3 raw siya kapag 0.125. 1, 2, 3. 0.25 siya at -2. And then 0.5, -1. Tapos, if x equals 1, it's 0. X equals 2, 1. X equals 4, 2. X equals 8, 3. So the shape is something like this. Okay? That's why in here, you can see, oh, tama. The domain is everything to the right. The range, it's any real number because it goes up and down. And then is there an asymptote? Yes, it cannot cross or touch this dotted line. And then, since y is in the exponent, you plug in the exponent. So guys, look at this. Going back. Dito, since y is the exponent, you will plug in sa y. And then, look at this. It takes the exponential form because it's hard to substitute here. That's why it would be easiest to make it exponential form. But we assign value to y instead of x. Similarly, ganun din kapag ka, uh, di ba, 1/2 man siya or 2 man siya, you make it into exponential form. What is the exponential form again? A to the y is equal to x. Therefore, sa y tayo magpa-plug in ng values. So what are the properties of log again? The base should be greater than 0, not equal to 1. The domain, paano nga ulit yung domain dito? I-transform natin. A to the y. Range natin yung power, di ba? The power is n-real, no problem. Look at the symbol in front of A. It's positive, so it's greater than. What's the number outside? 0, so it's greater than 0 because x equals 0 is the vertical asymptote. Okay? And then the graph passes through a point 1, 0 if there's no y-intercept. And the function is also 1 to 1. Tapos ito do take note of 6 and 7, yung increasing and decreasing trend. But with me, I don't memorize this. What I do is I try plotting. Look at this, guys. Y is b to the x at saka y is log b to the x. What do you notice? What's this 45-degree line? What does it indicate, guys? That those functions are inverse functions, yes. These two are inverse functions, and then these two are star na lang. These two are inverse functions. Kasi whatever you find on the top side of the graph, you will find on the bottom side exactly the same, di ba? So let's try to give if there is shifting. What I will do here is I will change the form. 3 to the y is x plus 2. Therefore, x is 3 to the y minus 2. Here, y plus 3 is logarithm of x minus 2. So I put the 3 on the other side first. And then I change the form. 3 to the y plus 3 is equal to x minus 2. Therefore, x is equal to 3 to the y plus 3 plus 2. This one, let's fix this. Y minus 2 is equal to log base 1/3 of x minus 1. Therefore, 1/3 raised to y minus 2 is x minus 1. So x is equal to 1/3 y minus 2 plus 1. Next, there's negative. What can I do with that, guys? Can I just make it negative y is log base 3 of 4 minus x? Can I do that? I can, right? Therefore, this becomes 3 to the negative y is equal to 4 minus x. So what I need is the x. So x is equal to 3 to the negative y plus 4. Lastly, negative y is logarithm base 1/3 of x. May 1 doon pala, hindi siya naka-parenthesis. So since it's not in the parenthesis, what I can do here is negative y plus 1. So 1/3 raised to negative y plus 1 is equal to x. Okay na siya. So, guys, let's try number 5. What's the domain for number 5, guys? Sige, range muna. Asymptote. The range for number 5 is, let's look here. Ito mga values na to lang titignan natin. The range, since y is in the exponent, y is an element of the real numbers. What about the domain? Look at the symbol. Symbol is greater than negative 2. Binaliktad ko lang, guys, ha? Asymptote. Cover the exponential. Ano matitira when you cover this? X equals negative 2. Very good. Number 6, go. Let's look at this line. Domain, range, and asymptote. Range first. Range would be all real. What's the domain for number 6? X is greater than 2. Because what? What is 2? 2 is your vertical asymptote. For number 7, let's start with the range, guys. Number 7, am I correct in saying na 7, 8, and 9, all the ranges are all real na? Okay, number 7, what is the domain? X is greater than 1. What is the asymptote? X is equal to 1. Very good. Number 8, what is the domain? X is less than 4. Very good. X is equal to 4. Okay. Next, please. Number 9. Domain is greater than 0 because x is equal to 0. Ngayon, guys, I want you to give me the shifting. For number 1 and number 5, are there any shifting along the x? Left by 2. Tapos, no vertical. Number 6, look, plus 2. Therefore, right side by 2. And no, y plus 3. So that means down 3. You understand? Number 7, plus 1. So, right side by 1, yung power mo, up by 2. Number 8, look, right side by 4, tas wala siya, y lang siya. So, no vertical. And then lastly, for number 9, ito, you can say 1 minus y siya eh. So, ano gagawin mo? No horizontal. And then, up by 1. Okay? Usually, guys, in your calculator, when you type log, when you just say log lang, you did not place any base. It's understood to be base 10. This is otherwise known as the decadic logarithm, decimal logarithm, or sometimes with me, it's called the Briggshian logarithm or common log. Ang dami niyang name. Common. Sa akin, ang ginagamit ko lang common o kaya Briggshian o kaya decimal. Parang ngayon. By Henry Briggs. Also, we have what you call the ln logarithm. The ln is always partnered with e. So, ang ln of x is the same as logarithm base e of x. This is what you call the Naperian logarithm or the natural logarithm. Okay, natural, it's roughly the same. Let's solve. For example, y plus 2 equals logarithm base 3 of x. So, eto, naka-y plus 2 na siya, so we're safe. What we do is 3 raised to y plus 2 x, or let's rewrite it on the other way around, plus 2. So you know that we have the domain, range, asymptote, and shifting. All right. What's the range? Just by looking at the form. Y such that y is an element of all the real numbers. What about the domain? Look, what's the sign in front of 3? It's positive. Therefore, x such that x is what? Do I have any numbers at the bottom? Nothing. So greater than 0 because x equals 0 is your vertical asymptote. Now, before we create our table, are there any vertical shifting along the x and along the y? Vertical and horizontal shifting? Let's look at the x. Are there any numbers? There's none. Along the y, what's the shifting? 2 units down. You're correct. So let's try to plot. So y is any real number. So to make y 0, what is the value that we need to make y equal to 0, guys? Negative 2. So that means let's try negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 1, 0, 1. Okay, so can you please plug in? Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 3 to the 0 is 1. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, right? 3 to the negative 1 is 0.33. Am I correct? What about this one? Negative 4. Am I correct in saying this is 0.111? This one, if it's negative 1, negative 1 plus 2 is 1. 3 to the 1 is 3. If y is 0, 0 plus 2, 2, 3 squared is 9. And then 27, right? Okay, so let's plot this. You know that the vertical asymptote is this one, as stated there. X equals 0 is your vertical asymptote. Now, yung x natin, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, apat, at least until 9. 1, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay. If it's negative 4, let's start with this. because that is that one. If it's x equals 1, it's negative 2. And then 3, that's negative 1. Pagka 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And then it's increasing. If it's 0.30, if it's negative 3 raw, pag 0.33, negative 4.111. So you can say that the graph would be in this shape. Can you follow, guys? So here, what do we need to do? Y plus 3, this is logarithm of x plus 1 base 2. Am I correct? Okay, and then 2 to the y plus 3 is equal to x plus 1. We need x to be isolated. So x is 2 to the y plus 3 minus 1. So if it's in this form, it's in exponential form already. We can solve for the domain, the range, the asymptote, and the shifting. The drawing, I'll leave the drawing to you. What is the range, guys? Can you please tell me the range? The range is all real numbers. What about the domain? Look at the symbol. X such that x is greater than negative 1. Because the asymptote is what? X is negative 1 is your vertical asymptote. Guys, can you give me the shifting? 1 unit going left. What about the y? 3 units down. Very good. Okay, eto exponential na lang tayo kasi I wrote it as exponent eh. It's not logarithmic. Can you give me the domain for exponential? X is all real. What about my range, guys? Y such that y is less than 1. Very good. What about my asymptote? Asymptote is y is equal to 1. This is a horizontal asymptote. Guys, in order, ito ang clue lang. To solve for the asymptote, cover the whole thing. Cover the exponential term. What will be left is 1. So that is your asymptote. In this case, look at the exponential term. Cover the exponential. What's left is negative 1. So x equals negative 1 is your asymptote. Can you give me the shifting, guys? 2 units going left. What about the y? 1 unit going up. What do we do with this, guys? Is it okay if what I do is this? Y minus 1 is equal to negative 2 logarithm base 3 of x. Ganito muna, right? Okay. And then if I divide by negative 2, it becomes negative. And then I will transform, right? Some of you are allergic to seeing that negative sign. Can I make it like this? Just to remove the negative sign? Yes. So, what is the exponent? Is it x or y? Y. Therefore, y stands for range. What's your range, guys? Very good. An element of all the real numbers. What about my domain, guys? X such that x is greater than 0. Because why? Because x equals 0 is your vertical asymptote. Now, shifting along the x and along the y. Do I have any shifting along the x? There's none because there's no number. Now, what about the y? Don't be fooled by the over 2. Let's look at the one on top. What makes y 0? 1. So that is actually 1 going up. You understand? Okay, another one. Okay. Transform this for me. Go. First is y minus 1 logarithm of x plus 1. Is it correct, guys? And then 10 to the y minus 1 is equal to x plus 1. Saan ko kinuha yung 10? Di ba sinabi ko kanina, if it's just written as logarithm, it's understood to be base 10. Tama ba ako? So, x would then be equal to 10 y minus 1 minus 1. Guys, range please. All real. Domain please. X is greater than negative 1 because x equals negative 1 is what? A VA. Shifting please. 1 unit to the left. Very good. And then 1 unit up. Here, how do you transform this? E to the y is equal to x minus 1. Therefore, x is e to the y plus 1. But then e, don't worry about this, Pokey. E is just any number. It just so happened that it's an irrational number. So DRA, and then shifting along the x, along the y. Yung iba ang ginagawa ganito eh. Sinusulat muna nila to before they go to that para tsaka sila magta-transform. By the way, the process in which I change from logarithmic form to exponential is called transformation. Okay? What's the range, guys? Very good. It's all real. What's the domain? X is greater than 1. What's the asymptote? X equals 1. Anong klaseng asymptote? Okay. Shifting, please. 1 to the right. Anything to the left? Anything up or down? None.